Part 2, watch the first part, let's go.
Around 11 o'clock p.m. local time, the south-facing camera in Gamble, Alaska, captured a large...
Fire Yeti! They're evolving! Why isn't the government evacuating Alaska?
Captured a large, highly textured celestial orb for just one frame.
Oh. I thought... Oh. But I'm still pretty sure that's a Fire Yeti.
I checked the next night, but it wasn't there.
So if we're not talking about the Fire Yeti, what are we talking about? This thing? Or this thing? That looks like a dust speck. I kinda wish you'd showed it in motion so I could confirm that, but I guess it doesn't matter anyway. I've demonstrated enough dust and lens flares and that kind of stuff by now that anyone who's not on board with that is not gonna get on board now. After all, this is all about Jesus, and this kind of content is clearly meant to appeal to the furthest gone kind of Christian, the kind who's perfectly willing to shut out even the most basic demonstrable facts if it helps them believe the rapture's coming. Speaking of which...
Jesus is describing the last days in the Bible's book of Luke, chapter 21, verse 25, when he clearly tells us that we will see these signs in the sky when the end is near.
Well, that's not really true now, is it? Oh sure, it says there'll be signs in the sky, but it doesn't say you'll see these signs in the sky. Signs that happen to be completely indistinguishable from dust specks, lens flares, glare, and sensor overload. Does it not seem a little bit odd to you that God's showing you signs completely consistent with ordinary camera effects? Stuff you can generate in your living room, stuff that's not uncommon whatsoever, and not confined to the sky? And for that matter, signs that aren't visible with your eyes, but only through cameras. Look, I understand that you really wish you're a special person who's living in the end times, getting raptured and all that. For some reason I've never been able to fathom, you find this deeply appealing, and okay, fine. But does it not matter to you that that hope is based in reality? That you have some good reason to think it's true? I mean, I know you know about lens flares and stuff. You've talked at a very basic level about how they work in the first part. If you know about these effects, you should be able to identify them. I mean, they're consistent even with your description of how they work. But instead of honestly asking yourself if what you're seeing in these weather cams is consistent with that phenomenon, you just ignore your own description of lens flares and declare that it has to be an invading planet, a sign in the sky, because you want it to be, I guess. And that's good enough. I understand wishing desperately that something was true. I think we've all had a similar kind of wish about something sometime. But what I can't understand is why you'd want to believe it despite having no good reason to and actually being contradicted by what you're looking at. When you have to ignore everything about how a camera works, even the stuff you know about, just to find some way to make yourself believe that what you're hoping for will actually come true, it seems like you're doing nothing but setting yourself up for disappointment.
Another south-facing camera captured this same celestial object in the nighttime sky the same night.
It's interesting that considering this is supposed to be a planet lit by the sun, and this is a photo from a south-facing camera before sunrise, which puts the sun off to the left, this object appears to actually be lit from the direction of the brightest light in the scene at the right edge there. Considering that and the fact that yet again this looks exactly like your typical dust speck, is this really more likely to be a planet, a sign in the sky, or dust? See, this is what I mean. Like, I know you're super into Jesus, and if this is a dust speck, that doesn't contradict Jesus or the end times or any of that stuff. But it does contradict your particular final days narrative horribly. And when reality, or at least Occam's razor, contradicts you this badly every single time you try to justify your position, what is the point? I really do understand being hopeful that the thing you believe is going to be so great will actually happen. It's not a rational or intellectual thing, but it's an understandable emotion. But this is way beyond just hoping it happens. This is falsely getting your hopes up. I mean, I suppose it's also possible that you're intentionally misleading people for whatever reason, but I don't think that's the case. I don't know what I originally thought when I responded to you a few months back, but now at least I don't think you're being intentionally deceptive. I think there are some people who spread similar technologically ignorant Christian end times conspiracy theories who are intentionally deceptive, but it seems to me like you're so deep in that you're deceiving yourself as much as anyone else. I hope someday you can see past the wool you've pulled over your own eyes. I'm not even telling you to stop believing in Christianity or the end times or any of that. There's plenty of people who are religious and believe they're currently in the end times without falling anywhere near this far down the well. You don't need these ludicrous justifications. You can just say you believe it because you read it in the Bible, or God told you, or you feel it, or whatever. And if you don't have any compelling reasons to present to the world, well, alright then. Normally I'd argue heavily against believing something just because you believe it, but in this case I think even that is more intellectually justifiable than what you're doing. And besides, if you strip away all the lens flares, I think it's basically what you've done already. Just own it.
Some of you have seen this celestial object in older footage captured by the southeast-facing camera in Yukon River Bridge.
I'm not going to bother pointing out what that is, I've done enough of that. But here's something interesting. I went to check the recent images from Yukon River Bridge myself, and check this out. Those lights are producing an enormous circular glare thousands of miles in diameter! Everybody in this scene is gonna burn! I hope whoever owns that truck got out of there safely.
This black dot equipment is capable of producing an enormous circular glare thousands of miles in diameter. Remember the lens flare rules that we covered earlier. A sun lens flare cannot rotate.
Okay, check. There's no sign of it rotating on an axis.
Does not have craters.
Check. There is compression, the background changes underneath it, but there's absolutely no sign of craters. If there were craters, you wouldn't see them anyway because of all that compression. And this goes hand in hand with why there's no sign of it rotating. There's no pattern on the surface that stays the same over time. You can't pick out when the same craters become visible as it rotates like you'd be able to on, say, the moon. If we could see the moon spinning, I mean. Yes, because of the compression artifacts that would hide it, but also because it's a lens flare.
Cannot go behind clouds.
Check. You can see the clouds through it as they pass by, of course, because it's a lens flare, and lens flares are transparent, but there's no indication that the clouds are in front of it.
And cannot react to the light source by becoming partially illuminated or shaded.
And check. Where parts of it look darker or lighter, the sky behind it is also darker or lighter. The amount of light and the amount of contrast between the lens flare and the background, of course, is going to affect the appearance of the lens flare, as will the original light source being obscured. But there's no sign of the lens flare itself being illuminated from the side as though it were a planet. But funnily enough, if the reduced visibility of part of the lens flare due to the background gradient wasn't actually due just to the changing background, it'd be illuminated on the wrong side. Not from the upper right where the sun is, but from the lower right.
Please remember to click on the thumbs up below so that this video becomes more available to those in need of this information.
How many people did that? 3,000. Well, folks, click the thumbs up on the debunk of this video. It's not going to make the people in need of this information any more likely to accept it, but at least it feels good. On the other hand, if you're terrified of cameras and think I should burn in hell, dislike it, and yell about it in the comments.
I don't have comments turned on, which lowers the search ratings on these videos, so your thumbs up helps to counteract that.
Yeah, I noticed you turned comments off. I was disappointed. I got a lot of entertainment out of those. I was actually hoping to look at a few of the more credulous or angry ones here, but that's not going to happen now. Even the old videos on your old channel have them turned off. It's as if millions of jokes suddenly cried out in terror and were suddenly silenced.
For those of you who are new, I had to disable comments.
Well, that's not true. You never have to disable YouTube comments. It's not like it was a life or death decision. You didn't like them, so you chose to disable them.
Last year, when I allowed comments under the channel name Universal News Media, call centers were actually hired to leave thousands of profane, negative comments in order to discredit the channel, thanks to your tax dollars.
Hoo boy, that's quite the story. Are you sure that's what happened? I know your viewers probably swallow claims like that without a second's hesitation, but I'm gonna need a little more than your say-so. Now that's not to say you didn't get thousands of negative comments. I doubt most of them were profane, but with the number of views you get and the sheer obviousness of what you're actually seeing most of the time, I find it pretty easy to believe that you got thousands of comments pointing out the flaws in your thinking, at least over the total lifetime of the channel. Now I don't know how each individual found your video. If this was last year, then they wouldn't have been my viewers, but it's not like my videos are necessary for people to find your channel. There happen to be quite a few people who get a little annoyed when people spread total nonsense to the gullible. But tax-funded call centers spamming your channel, let's see some receipts, eh? I'm asking rhetorically, of course. I know you have nothing to show that'll back that up. Just your predetermined religious beliefs, your paranoia based on it, and your unjustified assumptions. So this fits right in with everything else you say.
I successfully blocked them all, but spent endless hours doing so.
What a waste of time, why bother? Oh, people argued against you? Big deal. If your ideas can handle scrutiny, then no problem, right? And oh, there were a few naughty words? Oh well, laugh it off or ignore it. The sky's not gonna fall down, you'll be okay.
I was warned to stop, but I didn't.
Warned? By who? Invading planets or no invading planets, fake sun or no fake sun, I don't think anyone cares if you delete some YouTube comments. Surely the evil they's trizillion-dollar war against God doesn't hinge on whether that comment calling you a dummy stays up on your video. You might think you're that important, but...
I was banned from the FAA weather cameras, they thought.
Were you? So what, an IP ban or something, is what you're thinking? How'd you circumvent it? Did you get a VPN? Or did you just wait a little bit? See, the only video I found on your channel that seems remotely related to you being banned banned from the FAA cameras is this one, from June 2018. FAA weather cams shut down across Alaska and Canada. But of course, like the title says, that's not about a ban, that's about the cameras being shut down. Let's check it out though.
Several unusual things have happened over the past few days. I described in my previous video how I was paid a very nasty visit that affected all the digital equipment in my house.
We'll get to that in a minute.
The fact that I was paid an unfriendly visit should tell you something about these videos.
It doesn't tell us much of anything about anything, but like I said, we'll get to that in a minute.
I'm not afraid to die because I'm absolutely certain of where my soul is going.
By the way, remember in the Airport Yeti video when I said I thought the Universal News Media channel was over? That's because after this video where she talks about how she might be killed, she disappeared for 8 months. And I always kind of wondered if that was meant to scare the audience into thinking that they got her, which she's about to try to convince her audience would be proof that she's right about everything. And if that was why she disappeared, that'd be incredibly deceptive, and I'd have a really hard time still believing that she's a victim of self-deception. But I don't know if that's what happened, I have no way to find out, so I've just been giving her the benefit of the doubt. Call me too generous if you like.
I pray that all of you can have that same certainty by carefully following the screens of text at the end of this video. We're inhabiting these physical bodies just temporarily so that we can choose to love God out of our own free will and behave according to that love. If I should end up very sick or very dead, that will serve as further proof that what I've been showing here is absolutely true.
I'm sorry, but obvious lens flares don't turn into physics-defying planets even if someone who thinks that's what they are gets sick and dies. That doesn't remotely follow. And of course, there's also the fact that you didn't get sick or die anyway. You seem just fine, you have working equipment, you're still checking out weather cams every day. If they are trying so hard to shut you down, they're doing a piss-poor job of it. I'm pretty sure any random person with even the most basic skills in technology or news tie-in could do better. For dudes so godlike powerful with technology that can put entire fake suns in the sky, they seem awful impotent.
Today, all the FAA weather cams across Alaska and Canada are shut down.
That must have been inconvenient for the pilots or whoever else uses them. Maybe the web server went down. That sucks.
This should also tell you something about these videos that I've been showing you over the past few months.
What should it tell me? Can you just tell me what it should tell me? Because it sounds like it doesn't tell me anything.
I don't know if the weather cams will ever come back on.
Jeez, give them a little time, why don't you? They just went down today. I could understand saying this kind of thing if they'd been down for a month or something, but come on.
But I believe I have accomplished the task of showing you that we are in the very, very last days, and that the amount of time left to repent and turn to Christ is now dangerously short.
Okay, the fear-mongering is another reason I have a couple doubts whether you're sincere, just because people who spend a lot of time trying to terrify others into believing what they believe based on fear instead of sober reasoning often have some ulterior motive and they know it. But not always. The sincerely terrified do it too, so who knows, I guess. Speaking of sincerely terrified, let's look at the video that came right before this one about the unfriendly visit you were supposedly paid.
Something very perplexing happened to me the night before last. Just before midnight, I saw something out of the corner of my eye. So I looked out my living room window. I saw about an eighth of a mile wide strip of forest 200 feet away, completely lit up like it was daytime, except the sky behind it was black. It was nighttime.
And you immediately scrambled for your camera so you could start filming for your YouTube channel. Or not. You don't sound like you've ever owned a camera.
I saw the shadow of my roofline at the bottom of the trees, indicating that this intense light was coming from above my house.
Okay, so the trees were lit, and your house was lit on the same side, because the light was behind your house, and you could see the shadow of the roof up against the trees.
After 20 or 30 seconds, the strange light went out. There were no cars nearby, no one carrying lights, no noise from any aircraft.
Interesting assertions. No cars nearby, no one carrying lights. How are you sure about that? From the sounds of it, you were in your living room, on the opposite side of the house from the light source. So did you see who or what was or wasn't on the other side? You never say you saw the light source. Could you provide some details on the layout here? Like, for example, is your house near a road on the other side? Does it sit lower than the road? Are there street lights, sidewalks, other buildings, anything like that? But even more basic, you're telling us that this was an unfriendly visit. So what do you think was actually going on if there were no people, no cars, and no aircraft? How is it an unfriendly visit when it sounds like there was no visit, let alone anyone in the area? And if there was nobody around, where'd the light come from? Space? Look, I'm not saying I don't believe something happened. It's very possible you saw something, but I just don't see why I'm supposed to believe this was an unfriendly visit.
Afterward, I discovered some digital equipment in the house had been screwed up or turned off, such as my digital thermostat, digital clocks. The computer was messed up.
Oh. Hey, out of curiosity, are there any power lines around the other side of your house? Arcing power lines from like a branch falling on them and short-circuiting them or whatever can be really bright. Plenty bright enough to illuminate trees from the other side of a house. And power lines usually are high up, which probably explains why the shadow at the top of your house was visible at the tree line. It would have shone down past your house at an angle. Otherwise, you wouldn't have seen the shadow of the top of the roof. And depending on exactly what's happening, that arcing can keep going for a while. The 20 or 30 seconds you say it happened for is totally possible. And during and after it, you could wind up with the power flickering or going out altogether or surging in a way that easily could cause every effect you noticed. Stuff getting turned off or screwed up, whatever exactly you mean by that. So yeah, that'd be my first guess.
So if I end up gravely ill or dead, you'll know what happened.
You walked out your door on the other side of your house and got zapped? Best not to do that. Just call the electric company and stay inside. Alright, back to the first video.
My phone was tapped.
Wow, I didn't hear anything about that in your Universal News Media videos. Maybe I missed something, but I did look for it. What makes you think your phone was tapped? Did it make a clicking noise one time? Probably something like that, right?
Another woman doing the same thing received death threats to her family, so she stopped.
Really? Well, if that's true, I condemn that, especially if it was a credible threat. But from what you said, it's hard to tell. It could just as easily, actually more easily, have been the usual impotent rage kind of threats that pretty much everyone gets on occasion. There's always someone out there willing to say something stupid, including threats. So some details would have been nice if you wanted to make some kind of serious point with this, but it doesn't really matter since this doesn't actually seem relevant to anything you're saying. This isn't even about you.
I don't have a family, so they can't use that threat. And finally, I was paid a very hostile visit.
A very hostile visit, referring to the brief presence of light near your house one night and a power surge. That's not what I'd call a very hostile visit. Very hostile visit sounds really severe, like someone smashed in your door and hacked up your computer with an axe and told you, "Don't you make those YouTube videos anymore."
I quit the channel in June 2018. That winter, a man stood up front during a special evening church service that I was attending, and he said, "God has a message for someone here. He's got your back. Whoever this message is for, you know who you are. God's got your back. He's got your sides, your front, your back, and he says to go ahead. God is giving you the green light. God's got your back." Well, I knew that message was for me.
Just like everyone else in the room, I bet.
So I went ahead and I created a new channel, and my boss, the King of Kings, told me to call it The Final Days.
Audibly? Or more like you just came up with the name because you talk about the final days all the time and then you thought God injected that into your brain for some reason.
He also told me to make these videos more scriptural and evangelical.
Thanks for that, by the way. You know, I've been doing these conspiracy videos all year, and the religious connection is not always so obvious in the finished product. But I've been doing them because they're so often deeply tied to religious beliefs. That's what I find so interesting about them. It's an odd modern form of Christian proselytizing and Christian persecution conspiracy theories and end times beliefs and everything based on technological fails this time instead of just philosophical or scientific ones. And I've really enjoyed digging into it. If there's anyone who thinks I'm not really making anti-religious content anymore, well, that's not true. Just watch a bit more of the channels I've been responding to and you'll see what I mean. I've been doing that content all along. It's just a little bit different flavor. And with that, I think I'll end this. So thanks for watching, everyone. Not just this video, but all of my experimental videos during this year of weird. It's been a really refreshing change of pace. I'm not sure what I'm gonna do in 2020. I think it'll be quite a new era for this channel. No matter what though, I'll do my best to make it worth your while. And thanks a lot to everyone who supports the channel on Patreon, Subscribestar, PayPal, Paywhirl, any other method. Give this video a like, subscribe if you want to catch the next video, sign up to my email list at list.logicked.com for early access, and join my Discord. I haven't dropped in too much lately because it's been a little bit hectic, but I'll probably be in there more in the new year doing who knows what. So see you in the next video.